Hello and welcome to Good Game, the show for gamers by gamers. I'm your host, Bouncing Bajo, and this here is Jumping Junglist.
This holiday season is one of the biggest we've ever seen for gaming, and we've got them all here on Good Game, starting with this. It's the Rockstar racer that laughs in the face of Need for Speed, Midnight Club LA.
And after a brief tussle with the classification board, Fallout 3 is finally here and rated.
It's Roffle Cup time as Craig Foster challenges us to his game, football, but on our turf. And with so many games coming out this holiday season, Badge, you'd think they'd all be fighting for some time on Good Game, but Microsoft isn't too interested in showing you Gears of War 2.
But that won't stop us reviewing it. Plus, lead creative on Gears, Cliff Bleszinski, chats to us. And can games really test your moral values?
More on that later, but for now, can you guess the game for this week? News time.
Come on. The Interactive Entertainment Association of Australia has released its findings from their latest survey detailing the video gaming habits of Australians. This year's survey discovered that 68% of the population are active gamers, with 88% of all Australian households having at least one device for playing video games. The average age of the Australian game player has risen to 30 years of age, which is 2 years older than it was in the IEAA's 2007 survey. And the proportion of female gamers has also grown, with women making up 46% of the playing population, an increase of 5% over last year. Another interesting figure from the report is that over 90% of Australian adults think that Australia should have an R18+ classification for games. Renowned game designer Richard Garriott, the creator of the Ultima series, has returned to Earth after spending 11 days in space with a crew of Russian cosmonauts. Garriott touched down in central Kazakhstan on October 24th after a smooth landing and was greeted by his father, Owen Garriott, who was a NASA employee for more than 20 years and flew on several space missions in the 1970s. Something that makes Richard Garriott America's first ever second-generation astronaut. As a space tourist, the trip is reported to have cost as much as $30 million, but it seems to have been well worth it, with Garriott calling his extraterrestrial journey a great ride.
Good game!
Jung, when I see a game box and it's got a big shiny car in the foreground and street lights behind it in big font, I know it's bad of me, but I think, oh, it's another street racer, you know, and it's got the same tracks and the same music that I'm not really into. But Rockstars' Midnight Club Los Angeles is actually a pretty decent racer.
You know, not too expensive, around 2 to 3.
And when you get into town?
Day after tomorrow.
No problem. I know a guy who can sort things out. Tell me, can you drive?
A little.
Modesty.
Using Rage, the engine behind GTA 4, Midnight Club Los Angeles is a load-free sandbox racer set in gritty, grubby, dirty LA. You free-roam the streets with some stylish camera zooms, competing in classic and somewhat cliched street racer style.
Race some cars, man.
What you mean, race some slow cars?
There's a variety of camera angles, and the action camera is a welcome addition, even if it's a bit hectic and stressful in heavy traffic.
You can really see Rage at work here, Jung. Everything looks like it's straight out of GTA. In fact, I kind of wanted to get out of my car and steal some others that were around me. Apparently the map is actually really close to Los Angeles, but obviously tweaked a little bit to make it good for racing. We've both been to LA, Jung, but I don't remember there being this many pizza outlets there. In fact, I remember distinctly trying to get pizza in LA at E3 this year and having no luck at all.
Yes, in-game advertising is in the game in the form of real stores. And one of the first things that you notice is that they're actually carved out of 3D rather than a 2D flat image.
Yeah, it's a clever way of keeping that depth of field, but also keeping the frame rate up. It's a shame LA is so ugly, but thankfully the cars look great and you can customize them and stylize them at your leisure.
They handle well, and you can really tell the weight difference in the high-performance cars and the muscle cars. The motorbikes are especially fun. And now that we're seeing more of these open-world, sandbox sort of racers, Badge, I still don't think they've gotten the sat-nav down.
Yeah, Burnout Paradise had indicator noises, and that kind of worked okay. And here we have big yellow smoke, and that actually works really well. But I just wish there were more options, you know, more options for the HUD to point you in the right direction. Another problem that open-world racers deal with is the stopping power of objects that are around you, you know, like posts and lampposts, whether they should snap off or completely destroy your vehicle. Midnight Club gets this balance right. If you hit a car head-on, you can usually recover before you're damaged out. But if you hit a post, you just get knocked aside and have a small stopping penalty.
You took this online, right, Badge?
Yeah, it did, Jung, and I think that's where I had the most fun with this. There's a multiplayer cruise mode where you and everyone online just roam the city suggesting different types of events, and lag just didn't happen. But I think the most fun is capture the flag. And you've also got power-ups here, such as Roar, which makes all the traffic just duck for cover.
These power-ups make an appearance in single-player campaign as well as unlocks and special abilities. All up, I think it's a beautiful game in an ugly city. I'm giving it 8 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Yeah, it's not normally my kind of thing, street races, but I found myself really getting into this. I'm giving it 8 as well.
Good game.
Have you ever reloaded a saved game because after a few minutes you thought, I wish I hadn't blown up that school bus? Or have you ever wanted to send fruit baskets to the families of all the NPCs, aliens, and bosses you've killed over the years? Reaction times, lateral thinking, and physical dexterity aren't the only attributes of a gamer that can be challenged. Rather, the biggest challenge a gamer can face is having their ideals and expectations tested of what is right and what is wrong.
No more. You're frightening me.
Computer games are so cool that they allow you to be who you want to be, and nothing else does. You know, you can't... In a book, you have to read the story, and you have to start at page 1, you have to end it at page 200. And you're reading about another character and you've got no input to that, you just receive. But computer games, you're the one in charge. And if you want it that way, then you should get it that way.
It's now or never. Take the shot. Target down. I think you blew off his arm.
In terms of video games, you might not think of it as having moral dimensions, precisely because the aim is quite confined. You're aiming to win the game or to get a high score or to do something like that. But at the same time, you might think, well, perhaps I'm practicing being a certain kind of person. Perhaps I'm practicing thinking in a certain kind of way.
You euthanized your faithful companion cube more quickly than any test subject on record. Congratulations.
I think video games are the ideal platform to test your personal moral code because they offer a situation in which you can engage in moral actions that aren't going to have real-world consequences that inflict upon other people's interests, and you can thereby build up your own moral code.
Hey, are you my date? Thank God. You never know who's going to turn up when you've met someone online.
GTA is a really interesting example. The complexity of the moral situation in the real world is something that's trying to mirror. Right? So the real world is actually a world where it's not clear all the time what moral decisions you should make. It's not clear what the moral thing is to do. So within a game like that, you're given non-playing characters that are just computer generated, in which you can test your moral intuitions.
I think morals come from within. That's what I think. In other words, you're born with an appetite for doing no harm and doing a bit of good.
Morals are about how we interact and how we want others to treat us and how we want to be treated by others. So morals are, one way of expressing it is a kind of social contract.
Miracles are a very powerful force which can be used for good or for senseless, mindless, and glorious evil.
Our moral choices and ethical standards are constantly questioned in-game. But what exactly are morals and ethics?
Ethics, I suspect, are an agreed-upon formula by a group of people living in the same village or the same profession. So the ethics, I think, can slip and slide depending on a kind of a mob or group decision.
Could you do such a thing? You could use games to develop your virtue, to develop a range of virtues. And one that's really interesting within games is the idea of empathy.
We just sat there, too afraid to move, until you came along.
The ability to place yourself in the position of another person, the ability to empathise with them, should be a great thing.
Most game universes exist in these incredibly artificial and sterile moral universes where there's no consequence to your action, where it's really obvious who the good guys are and it's really obvious who the bad guys are. So in the games that we make, particularly something like Bioshock, you know, let's treat it like a serious adult conversation. Let's tackle that head on.
I'll not have him hurt my little ones.
It's okay, lad.
That's not a child. Not anymore, Alex. Dr. Tenenbaum saw to that.
As the medium of video games evolves and expands, so does the vocabulary of our emotional experiences with them. The simple pleasure of playing an arcade game has expanded to encompass feelings of empathy, guilt, pity, sorrow, and regret. Other forms of entertainment can offer you moral exposure, but only games can provide moral interaction and allow you to conduct ethical experiments. Yet in a virtual world, there are no real consequences, and this presents one of gaming's biggest challenges, forcing the player to explore the limits of their own moral and ethical code.
For those of you who've punched every single rat in Oblivion and now actually find yourselves with some time on your hands, don't change those pants or get a haircut just yet, because Bethesda Game Studios are at it again, and this time they're set to plunge you into a post-apocalyptic dystopian society in Fallout 3. This is Oblivion with pew-pew lasers and giant cockroaches, Jung, and I'm loving it.
Yes, there's nothing like an old-school RPG with old-school dialogue trees and gear collection to while away the hours. In Fallout 3, you start life as a newborn stuck inside Vault 101, a bunker designed to protect humanity from fallout radiation and the horrors that lurk outside.
You spend some time as a toddler, talking to people, getting some target practice, and getting used to the game's dialogue tree structure. Then you take your GOAT test, which is a very clever way of determining the stats and skills that you'll have for the rest of the game. There are a lot of leveling options, so it's really good to pick away and go for it rather than being a jack of all trades.
Soon after you become a man, your father mysteriously flees the vault, setting you on a course to find him. The outside world is beautifully derelict and completely open, free for you to explore.
And special mention really needs to go for the world design, Jung. There's some real inspiration behind it. And when you're walking through a run-down mall and you bump a shopping trolley, or if you hit a raider's booby trap, or with this chilling kind of old town music radio behind it, it really is an immersively chilling experience.
Open world games often struggle with the design of buildings and dungeon-like areas, but Bethesda's done a great job of putting the right pointers in the right places, so you very rarely get lost or go the wrong way.
There's no run button here, so before you set out on a journey, you better make sure you know where you're going. The outside world is a dangerous place, full of scavengers, shanty towns, mutated humans, and a whole lot of gore.
At first glance, it's easy to think that this game is pretty slow, the combat's a bit dated, and the gear collection is pretty boring. But after about 4 hours or so, you realize it's not slow, but it's truly engrossing. The combat isn't dated, but strategic. And you'll start to enjoy scavenging every box and solving every riddle, just hoping that it has that much-needed ammo inside. How much of an effect being a bad guy has in Fallout 3, we're not really sure of, seeing as we've been smashing it the whole weekend and more, and it feels like we've still only done about 3 quests.
And one of them failed because I left the door open and some ants came in and killed the quest giver. My best advice, besides shutting the door behind you, is not to mistake the town doctor for a bad guy and shoot him in the face in the first hour of the game. He's the only one who could cure your radiation sickness.
Gotta work on keeping that weapon holstered, Badge.
You all saw him, he came at me.
To take down a foe, sometimes it's just a quick matter of a shotgun to the head, but you also have a feature where you can pause time and select which body part to focus on first, which is pretty handy for sneak attacks or for ambushes.
But Jung, you know, when I heard that this pausing time mechanic was in Fallout 3, I was like, oh no, you know, I'm not a fan of pausing time to select where you want to fight. But after about 2 or 3 hours, when it becomes a lot more necessary for you to do this, I just started loving, you know, setting up that strategy and watching it play out in slow motion, especially with the grenades.
It definitely adds a strategic element to it, Badge. But I don't know about you, but I thought the whole third-person camera view thing, just like in Oblivion, useless.
Yeah, Jung, it's like the feet aren't mapped properly to the world, so you just end up ice skating all over the place.
The story branching AI is clever and it's fun solving all the riddles, but it would have been nice to see the combat AI of enemies a bit tighter, Badge. Beasts pretty much come at you head on until dead or they run away, and humans duck and move a bit, but that's kind of about it, really. And I'd hate to repeat my gripe about weapon deterioration, Badge, but it's a pretty big part in this game, and when is that ever a good idea? As many would already know, Fallout 3 was originally banned in Australia, but like many controversial games before it, it was changed, resubmitted, and then classified.
Bethesda have stated that it was only the names of the drugs which actually has changed, and that all of the world is playing the same version of the game.
Like we said before, we're really just scratching the surface here, and it's been a tasty treat so far. It's really easy to get lost in this world. I love a game where the enemies fight each other and you can save at any time, and it has such a play length. I'm giving it 8.5 out of 10 radiated chickens.
Never really got into Oblivion, Jung, but for some reason Fallout 3 just got me hardcore, and whether it was the pew-pew lasers or just the setting or just a nice antidote to the pleasantness of Fable 2, either way, there's a strong possibility of pants not being washed in my house for a few weeks. I'm giving it 9.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Once again, it is Roffle Cup time, and we are lucky enough to have with us Craig Foster himself. How are you, man?
Yeah, very well. You?
Good to have you on the show.
Yeah,
pretty
thanks,
well.
buddy.
What team are you going to choose here for FIFA 09?
Well, I've got to play Australia. We're in the middle of our World Cup qualifiers at the moment, so...
You reckon if you win here, maybe that'll give them some luck or something?
I think it will.
What's it? Maybe I better pick a really bad team then, right?
Play as Scotland or something like that.
All right, Scotland it is.
4 stars.
Scottish is actually a
It's
4-star
above us.
team against Australia, the 3.5-star
We'll
team.
see how I think last time we played them, we beat them 5-0 or 5-1 or something. So.
All the waiting is over now. We've got a game on.
With the little kids playing a game like this, do you reckon it would encourage them to take to the game in real life?
Oh, well, look, it certainly gives them an understanding of the game, no question. But what I find is, and you know, with my own son and his friends, that they all play the game. This is just an extension of their love of the game.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Oh, go. Oh, no. Oh, yes.
No.
Yes. No. Oh, it's a great finish.
Yeah.
It's completely false.
It's their new coach.
Yeah, but the guy can't do it. He's never scored a goal like that in his life. It's not possible.
Are you saying the game's not realistic?
No, it's...
Is it usually a case of the best on-field player is the best electronic player?
The best players often are the most intuitive ones. You know, it's like a Harry Kewell. You know, he's just a brilliant, intuitive, natural player.
With a strategic mind, sort of?
Well, you know, the best players often don't have that.
Yeah.
The best players, because they don't need it, they haven't had to develop it, you know? Having said that, Harry is a gun on FIFA 09.
Yeah.
Pass. Go. Can you... Oh, no, yes.
What other games are you most into?
Oh, Half-Life. Half-Life, yeah.
Love Half-Life.
Oh, yeah, you like it?
Yeah, that's one of my favourite ones of all time, yeah.
Ratchet and Clank. I think it's Tools of Destruction.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Do you know?
That's a good one, yeah.
Have you played it?
Yeah.
Right, okay. Delta Force.
Ah, yeah.
Did you play that?
No, I never played that one.
Oh. Not Time Out.
Time Crisis.
Time Crisis.
Yeah, with the guns, yeah.
Yeah, so it was on Sega Saturn, right? But, you know, you could sit back and actually be shooting the screen.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It was it was a big step forward, you know?
Oh, deflected off the player.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Can you turn? Oh, good boy, good.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah! Yes! That is tremendous. Look at that. Timmy Cahill. Good boy, Timmy. Good boy, Timmy. You know I'm a big fan. The rescues Australia again.
Well taken, despite all the efforts to stop it.
I think the World Cup, the last World Cup in 2006, brought a lot of respect to Australian football. The way they played, the results they had. It's important, though, that we make the 2010 World Cup. I think to make that second one is important for the game here in Australia, but also, as you say, for respect around the world. Go. Oh, he's accelerated. He has accelerated.
Oh, no.
Go, son. No.
So, yeah, have you been excited with how the A-League's going so far?
Everyone in Australian football is extremely excited, you know, given where we came from. So the interest has always been massive. In fact, even when the NSL was essentially bankrupt, you know, on SBS, when we used to have World Cup qualifiers, you know, they'd have incredible viewing figures. Virtually everyone who comes to this country as a migrant brings with them a love of the world game, because there's 205 countries who play it. Oh no, bad.
How important do you think it is for the Socceroos to do well, so we have that national pride, so that soccer takes off locally?
It's been critical in the last few years because we needed it to support the A-League. the result of making that 2006 World Cup, that changed the game forever. And the benefits of that can never be taken away. Once you get in people's heart, it's a bit like gaming, right? once you get inside, not just their head, but actually their heart, and they really love something, then you can never take that away.
Well, it was a long, tough game, closer than the score would suggest. Had a fantastic goal from Australia, but unfortunately, today Scotland beat Australia 4-1.
But
thanks
awful.
thanks for your time.
I apologise to all the fans of the Socceroos. I haven't done us proud today, I'm afraid. Mark Schwartz, he may well come back and sue me with the performance I put him through today. He hasn't conceded 4 goals for a long time. But well done, you were far too good for me today.
Next time, Halo 2?
Oh, no contest. You're gone.
Marcus Phoenix is back, the man who gets the job done, as is Dom, Baird, and terrible Terry Tate, Coltrane. And a rookie named Carmine, who might as well be the red shirt on the Star Trek away team. Because when Gears of War 2 hits shelves soon, the battle with the Locust resumes.
The light mass bomb from Gears 1 resulted in a few months of peace. But now, somehow the Locusts are able to sink entire cities. Only one hope remains: Jacinto, the human capital built entirely on solid rock.
But here we have to call a halt to our review and let you in on a few tricks of the reviewing trade. You see, we aim to review games in the week that they're released, which means we need them a couple of weeks ahead of time. The publishers send us review copies of games, which we understand are not always finished. Sometimes we can't test out the multiplayer, or sometimes there are still known bugs.
And we play them on special versions of consoles known as debugs, which you can see behind us there. They're on loan to us from publishers for this very reason. Here, for example, we have the new Bond game, Call of Duty World at War, Endwar, Mirror's Edge, all currently undergoing review.
Now, very occasionally,
just once in fact,
instead of sending us a review copy of the game, they'll actually require us to travel into their headquarters to play the game in controlled conditions.
And that game was Halo 3, and now it's the same for Gears of War 2. Except that with Halo 3, even though we were at Microsoft HQ, we were allowed to record our own footage to illustrate the points we wanted to make about the game.
With Gears, we've been allowed to play the game, but not record it. Instead, they've sent over their promotional footage, which you can already find on the net anyway. So, we're gonna have to record our own footage.
Let's do it. At first glance, they've just made it more Gears of War-ish. The new weapons, like the Gatling gun and the mortar, are heaps of fun to use. And the new enemies, like the priest who can resurrect, keeps things interesting. And, of course, new executions.
Gotcha.
There's care under the hood as well. Load times are masked well with story, and textures don't pop in but fade in.
And there's been a lot of talk about ramping up the story in Gears of War 2, which we talked to Cliff Blazinski about, lead creative on the project.
I'm not going to sit here and say that we're suddenly creating Shakespeare or some sort of like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind type independent film here. I mean, it's still very much a summer blockbuster. But if we can get just a little bit of heart in there, just a little bit, then we'll have succeeded. And I think when gamers pick up the game and they experience what Dom is going through and play that story arc, I think they're going to really believe that.
And you can see the rest of that interview on our website. There's still parts of the story that are very predictable, and even parts that copy other games.
My name's Dom, and I miss my wife. Dom, maybe the locust took her.
But without giving anything away, there's a few moments in the game where they take a stab at emotioneering and they nail it, and you sit back and think, that's pretty hardcore.
You know, it wasn't that Gears 1 had a good or a bad story, it just might as well not have had one. And it's not really what Epic are known for.
I saved my dad when I was in prison.
Oh, you got a past. You got a terrible past.
Oh,
is it locust?
Number 2 has a mix of good and bad storytelling, but it does stick to that action movie feel of the game. And the point is, there is a story. You know, it's a universe worthy of having a story, and they've given us that missing element.
It's also a lot more atmospheric, with a little bit of horror and some great lighting effects. I think Gears is a franchise that's had to deal with a lot of people copying them. So if they made just the same old Gears, it wouldn't be good enough. So they've mixed it up. New environments like snowy mountains, rainy ghost towns, underground caverns, and flying over forests look beautiful.
Gameplay mixes it up as well. You can now use locusts as living shields.
Coltrane, baby.
Woo! And they've thought outside the box with the cover system too, evading laser security systems. You can shoot fruit to lure a rockworm, which you can then use as cover. And you can use switches and levers to provide you with cover and deny it to your enemies.
And these things don't get too complicated, otherwise they'd start to be like puzzles. They're great distractions, but they keep the focus on the action.
It's not all rosy though, Jung. Teammate AI can take quite a while to heal you, and sometimes they teleport from cover to cover as the game tries to work out which cover they're actually in. And in the level where you drive a tank through the snow, the controls are unnecessarily wonky. All of which we'd love to show you, but
More opportunities are given for co-op players to support each other. The campaign as a whole is a little bit longer. But as usual, the longevity will come from the multiplayer, which has been bumped up to 5 versus 5, seeing as Gears is a competitive game now.
There's also the new Horde mode, where you and 4 friends can take on swarms of enemies in a small space. Jung, it kind of reminded me of the old FPS Alien vs Predator. It's not really as much fun as Deathmatch or Team Deathmatch, but it's a cool new mode that some people might enjoy.
Probably the most important thing is that Gears of War fans are going to be very satisfied and definitely not disappointed. It was never going to be as revolutionary as the first, but it is a better game. I'm giving it 9 out of 10 rubber chickens.
We hope you've enjoyed our attempt at a reenactment of Gears of War 2. It's a shame we couldn't show you the real theme because the truth is it's a bloody decent game. I'm giving it 8.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Barbie's the last one standing.
Handbag of fury.
Now, did you guess the game for this week?
It was, of course, Spider-Man. Released for the Atari 2600 in 1982, it was the first time Spidey featured in a game on a home console. It saw our hero scaling buildings using his web to defuse bombs planted by the Green Goblin. Spider-Man has gone on to star in over 30 games on over 15 different gaming platforms. Next week, it's Battle of the Bands with both Rock Band and Guitar Hero World Tour coming out. We'll take a look at both and compare.
Since the beginning of time, man has tried and failed to get RTS to work on a console. Ubisoft's next Tom Clancy game, Endwar, tries to remedy this with a strategy game controlled by your voice. All that plus Jung may or may not take up flower ranging. Until then, the cake is alive, Bajo out.
I'm all out of bubblegum, Junglist out.